Today's episode of Voiced is from r/entitled parents and is about a parent who thought they could rent out an entire park for their child's birthday party, but what happens when other people show up? Subscribe if you enjoy.
I'm at a city park with my kids. We've been to this park many times. There is this one spot where there is a rocky hill, all tree covered. It's nice and shady on a hot day. There is a playground and a pavilion at the top of the hill. We get up there, and I immediately notice loud noises, and I'm having to step over cables and extension cords. Someone rented the pavilion and set up not one, but 3 bounce houses around it. Friggin' great. So I have to give the disappointing news to my kids that even though they are surrounded by bounce houses, they cannot play in them since this is a private party, but they are free to go hit the playground. Everyone is cool. I sit on a bench as my kids go to town on the fake pirate ship when I hear, "Hey!" That's when ED, doing his best to imitate the situation from Jersey Shore, walks up to me and informs me that the playground is closed for a private party. I look at him and inform him that the public park does not close for private parties, and it sounds like he rented the pavilion nearby, which is fine, but doesn't give him exclusive use of the neighboring playground. He storms off and returns with a rental agreement and shoves it in my face, telling me to get my kids and leave. Right, so the rental agreement is very clearly for the pavilion, all for the grand sum of $35 for 4 hours. How could any sensible adult think that $35 granted you exclusive use of a public playground? Moreover, why is it so important for you to have exclusive use of a public playground? I again point out to him that he rented the pavilion, not the park, and my kids won't go on his bounce houses and we won't go into his pavilion. But the playground is fair game for everyone. He begins hurling threats and I'm weighing just taking my kids and leaving to avoid this jerk. Then I decide I need to take a stand on principle. So I tell him to get lost and proceed to use my phone to find the phone number for the park office. Our county staffs our parks. During the summer months, they employ park rangers who have peace officer authority. I call the park ranger and tell him that there is trouble up at this shady playground and he needs to come right away. Sure enough, as I'm getting off the phone, Dolph returns with 2 of his friends to tell me that they are ejecting me from the park. No, you're not. And if you touch me, I'm calling the cops and pressing charges. No anger, no rage. With this promise of action, however, one of them kind of widens his eyes and steps back, saying to his friend, "Just leave him alone, man." This guy, for some reason, does not want the police coming, and it is very obvious. The ringleader wouldn't back down, however, and tried his best to get in my face, scream and yell. He grabbed my arm. I removed his hand. All of this just as I saw the park ranger pull up, yelling for everyone to step back from one another and come over. This smug jerk pushes the rental contract into the chest of the ranger, telling him that I am trespassing and he rented this space for the day for his kids' party. Now, normally I don't like posturing by law enforcement, but here it was pretty amusing. "Ranger, touch me again, and I'm arresting you," reads contract. "This is for renting the pavilion. You have use of the pavilion, but the playground is open for public use." Hands it back. "Also, your permit doesn't allow you to set up bounce houses. Where did you plug these in?" Ranger follows the extension cords and sees that they ran them to the nearby public bathrooms. There was an outdoor outlet. It was locked. This guy cut the lock off so he could plug in his stuff. Ranger comes back with the broken lock. "Did you cut this lock?" It was like that when I found it." "Really? Because it was intact this morning. So some random person cut this lock and you just happened to come across it within the last 2 hours?" I guess. Long story short, he let them stay and let them keep the bounce houses because he didn't want to ruin a kid's party. He wrote the guy a citation for the broken lock and the unauthorized power use and banned him from the park for the remainder of the season, after the party. Amazingly, this entire event was lost on my children, who barely noticed anything was going on, likely because of the compressor noise.
Wow, talk about a tense situation. That park ranger certainly knew how to handle things, but let's see what happens when someone tries to outsmart an engineer in the next story.
I worked for a company that provides specialized equipment used in manufacturing. To protect my anonymity, I'll have to be vague about what exactly this machine does. During my time working in this field, I got to know many clients who would need these machines installed and serviced. One of these customers we'll call Jake. I later left the company to go to a different job, but Jake apparently kept my number. One afternoon, I got a call from Jake saying that they wanted a new unit installing and another unit needed maintenance and wanted to know if I was available. I let him know that I had left the company, but that I could pass him on to someone who could help. He told me he would pay 2 times my current rate to install the unit over the weekend. He let me know that the company had increased the rates for installation and the company just couldn't afford it. The instructions they sent over just weren't clear enough, and their engineers were scratching their heads trying to figure it out. He begged me to consider it, and I agreed. For more context, installing this unit can take a good few hours or up to a day on your own. The company gives you two options. You can either pay for an engineer to come and install it, or you can save money and they will send instructions so the customer's own engineers can install it. The instructions aren't easy to follow, and it is company policy that if someone has started to install the equipment, the supplier wouldn't get involved since they couldn't verify that any of the pieces were broken. This will be important later. I drive down on the weekend and they show me the boxes of equipment. I set to work and make good progress installing the unit. Around 6 hours in, I'm stopped by Jake, who greets me. I let him know I'm nearly finished and he tells me, "Sorry, but they just don't have the budget to pay you." He understands my frustration, but his engineers can take it from here. To say I was frustrated was an understatement. I wanted revenge. There's a small button inside the unit that changes the unit into test mode. This is done to perform maintenance on the unit, but it's impossible to configure the unit with this button pressed. It's only possible to reach this button using a pin, so it's not easily pressed during installation. Because of this, the installation instructions don't mention it. There's no real way of telling the equipment is in test mode. It just won't work normally. I think you can guess where this is going. I press the button, collect my things, and leave. Monday morning, I get a call from Jake. I declined. I knew my old company wouldn't get involved since I had already started installing the unit. I knew his engineers would never figure it out. I just had to let him stew. A few days later, with many missed calls, I finally pick up. Jake is furious. He asks me where the heck I've been and why I haven't been picking up the phone. He tells me they can't figure out how to configure the machine and they need my help. I tell him, "Why is this my problem? You won't pay me." He told me he was sorry and they would work something out if I could get there as soon as possible. I told him, "Oh no, you're going to pay me $7,000 up front before I do anything." I'd never felt this powerful before. He screamed at me for a bit and hung up. He called back a day later after saying he's sorry for how he acted and said that if I could come fix it, he would pay me in a totally defeated tone. He tried to fight it, saying he'll pay when I was done, but I was having none of it. After a bit of back and forth, he agrees to pay me. The money hit my account and I came in the next day. The look of confusion on his face when I took out a pin and changed the unit from test mode was priceless. It was even more priceless seeing his reaction to me packing up my tools and leaving after only 20 minutes of configuring. Easiest $7,000 I'd ever made. Don't try to mess with a professional problem solver.
Before I talk about today's posts, please consider subscribing for more engaging content like this. Today we have some real gems from Reddit. First off, the post, "EP thinks they rented the whole park," is a wild ride. I mean, who hasn't had that moment where you think you've rented an entire park just because you paid $35? The audacity of this guy trying to close down a public playground for his private party is insane. And kudos to OP for standing their ground and calling the ranger. The best part, the kids were totally oblivious to the drama, which is hilarious. And then there's, "Don't mess with an engineer." This one had me laughing out loud. Jake thought he could get one over on a professional, and it backfired spectacularly. I love how OP turned the tables and made Jake pay up front. The look on his face when he realized what happened must have been priceless. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Have you ever had a similar experience where someone tried to pull one over on you? Or maybe you've seen something just as ridiculous at a public park. Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. See you next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voiced. If you enjoy daily high-quality stories, please like and subscribe to show your support.